Say a word about your family, their opinion about you doing natural births and eating fruits and vegetables.
You're gonna be okay. Where's the doctors? Are you seeing doctors? What's happening?
The stigma around it being treating women as they're sick.
If you're not on this path, do whatever your overlords taught you to do.
With the birth alone, we've shared this so many times now, but it was 10 minutes long, allowing your body and allowing the baby to come in and say, okay, this is how I want to be born. You get out of the way. Yeah, because you're
How was so say a word about your family and your extended family and their opinion about you doing natural births and eating fruits and vegetables, and that I could see this would be a place where some stuff could happen.
I mean, I was the first person who was doing, more of like a home birth style. And they're like, are you going to be okay? Where's the doctors? Are you seeing doctors? What's happening? So they were kind of, concerned about it. But then in the second pregnancy.
Well, it's not that we're not seeing doctors. It's just, I feel like the main concern was, being your first baby.
Yeah.
And like you say, the stigma around it being treating women as they're sick.
Yeah.
Right. So, and even though I have to say, probably most of the women, are not in the top shape. According to
no, I'm not recommending. If you're not on this path, do whatever your overlords taught you to do, please. Like, don't be like, I listened to Professor Spira, he said go do a home birth. Not if you're not doing this. Go do whatever you're taught to do.
Yeah, but the first, what I think the most out of the first pregnancy was her transformation during the first, I'll say
13 hours.
Maybe the last, I'll say 10 hours of labor. She went from like, I don't know what I'm doing and this is painful and difficult, into like a lioness.
Yeah.
And that inner, so I think her background of all the work that she had done spiritually and mentally really allowed her to tap into a space where she was like, and we went to the hospital and she walked in and said, you, this is what you do. And I'm popping this baby right now.
Yeah.
And she took over,
I took over the room
and we had a natural birth and she was just singing and laughing.
But
it was where her heart was at.
Yeah.
And so I feel like she had like a breakthrough in her own life on how she started the labor and how it ended.
Yeah.
They were two different women.
Yeah.
She came out with a baby
and
a different woman.
You have your birth as well as women know. You have a rebirth when you're actually birthing, right? So that I think was such a great start and a great way for me to say, okay, this was how pregnancy and birth was for me now, and it was great and amazing. It was exactly what I needed, but I knew that my second was going to be different. Okay. Yeah. And I I prepared for 2 years. I started on, a mucus-free diet, like 2 years prior. I was like, I'm going to clean my body, my crevices. I knew that if I had a lot of acidity and a lot of obstructions in my body, that it's not going to open up. I also became a doula. So I became a certified doula, and I was like, okay, I understand how the body works and what's going to happen. So I know what I need to do. Like I knew that, for instance, when you're pregnant, you don't push while you're pregnant. You just say, I'm not going to push any bowel movements out. You're going to just allow your body to naturally do what it needs to do. So then you can almost train your body to not push. Because I didn't want to have a pushing birth. I didn't want to go through that process of like, I have to push this baby out. I knew that my body could do it. I knew that the baby could do it. So with Francis, my second one, when I prepared for those 2 years, my actual pregnancy was so different. I mean,
night and day.
I was like, I only gained 26 pounds. I was working out. I'd go to the gym every morning at like 5 a.m. I had lots of energy. I didn't have any of those like really crazy emotional ups and downs. I didn't have swelling feet. I didn't have nausea. I had what I felt was like how, pregnancy and birth should be. And then with the birth alone, I mean, we've shared this so many times now, but it was 10 minutes long. I mean, that day, when I was going into labor, like that day, I was carrying boxes of fruit, like packing fruit boxes out of the farmer's market, coming back and then going, I could be like, I knew this was the 40-week mark. And I was like, I could go into labor. I'm not quite sure. Right. And I just rolled with it. And I woke up and I just intuitively knew. I was like, okay, I need to go to the bathroom. I knew my mucus plug was going to come out. And I was like, oh, I know the bloody show's coming. Oh, okay. Now I'm going to go on all fours and my water's going to break. And I didn't know at that moment that when my water broke, the baby was going to come out literally a minute later. But it just happened. Like my water broke. I stood up. I had one contraction. And then the second contraction, his head came out. And like he was sitting there and like literally amniotic fluid is flying on his face. And he's like wiping his eye, right? And then I'm standing up in just like a normal like squatted position, right? It was just like I knew intuitively, like stand up, squat. And then that third contraction, his whole body came out. He caught him. And I was like, okay. And I remembered that moment because he was like, we have a baby, take him. And I was like, give me a second. I need to ground, you know? So I was able to take that second to breathe. And then he like chucked him under my legs as if he was a football. And it was easy. And then the midwife came in because she didn't make it in time.
Right. Yeah, the midwife is on the way.
Yeah, she's on the way, and she's like, congratulations, you had a baby. She's like, you want to deliver the placenta? I'm like, sure. I literally stand up and my placenta comes out. Like, there was no pain. And I know it's so hard for people to realize this, but like, I had no pain with this birth. It was almost like just like this surge of energy, of adrenaline. Not that I was getting from my Diet Cokes, but it was like this adrenaline rush that allowed me to just be so grounded and present at that moment, where I wasn't going into this ethereal space and coming out of my body. I was just really grounded and present. And what else was I going to say about it? And after that, I slowly but surely, I was like, grab me bananas. I need my bananas, because I needed energy. You know, I didn't have to go lay down and like sleep.
She was walking around,
and they kept telling me, they're like, go lay down. And I'm like, why? I'm like, I feel good. And I like just wanted to.
The midwife, they're not used to see somebody that, you know, they don't need to rest. So she was walking around, going to the restroom, you know, doing her thing.
Yeah. And, yeah. So it was pretty awesome. And we,
So if you're new here, I'm Professor Spira. I practice something called the Mucus-less diet healing system by Professor Arnold Ehret. I've done so for over 22 years, and I've helped thousands and thousands of other people. Ever had any questions that you wanted to ask me personally? Then I want you to join the Mucus-free Life membership. When you do, you're gonna get direct access to me. I do 2 coaching calls per month. You bring your questions in, and we're gonna go through everything. We have 2 accountability calls per month. We have our own social media platform called Mucus-free Social. You also get access to the menu and recipe library. We also have exclusive training sessions, workshops with me, all kinds of fun stuff planned for the membership. My opinion is reading the book alone is not enough. So many people have read the book, but they didn't have the structure, support, and accountability to keep them on track, to decode certain things that were still confusing. That's what the membership is all about. You're gonna have access to a community of people that actually care about your success. There's nothing else out there that's like this, because there's nothing like the Mucus-less diet healing system. This is one of one. You want to get the benefits out of it, then you're gonna wanna join the Mucus-free Life membership. Click the link right now. See you in there.
I feel also the vibe in general was so different. You know, it was a joyful, easy, fun, you know, amniotic fluid, you know, shooting in my face while I'm trying to call the midwife with one eye open.
Right.
I can't even see.
And that's really interesting.
With situation, you know, and having fun with it, and not,
no stress or worries. Like I was
the opposite.
It was like, everything's gonna be good. Like everything.
It was a fun situation.
I had no expectations, you know. And as a doula, I know other women are listening to this. You know, when you go into your birth and say, listen, I have no expectations, but I'm just going to surrender. I think that's really the best outlook. Because when we have these preconceived thoughts of like, I'm going to deliver my baby this way and only this way. And then the baby's like, I don't want to be delivered like that. Or you can't, you know, it's like allowing your body and allowing the baby to come in and say, okay, this is how I want to be born. And you get out of the way. Almost like I got out of the way because, you know, this is totally his personality too. He's like a very like grounded, straightforward, you know, wants his bananas, wants his durian. Like this is just who he is, you know? And I got to be that vessel for him to come into the earth this way.
Right.
Yeah. What were you going to say? Oh.
And for all the viewers, we're gonna recap a little bit here, because I want people to really, I think sometimes probably when you told that story a lot, but people really aren't grasping how heavy that is, or how important this is. So this has become normalized. On the right hand side here, here's just a random UK mom lost part of ear, almost died after getting sepsis, trying to give birth. And you could find hundreds and thousands of these type of case studies of very sick, the sickness coming to the surface as a result of the birth process. Like you get to see how sick you really are when you're, just as you do when you're fasting. When you're fasting, you get to actually meet who you really are. When you get rid of the coffee and you get rid of the donuts and you get rid of just the food in general, you can meet who you actually are. Most people that do that without knowing what they're doing or without any transition, they find out they're actually fairly miserable people without their drugs, without their stimulants, without their coffee and their cigarettes and their meat and their dairy and their potato chips and that kind of stuff. They're not very happy. But you take those things away, you get to see who you really are. This comes across to me like that. The giving birth process, as a woman, you're going to see who you really are if you're doing it this way. You know, if you're doing it in the natural way, no drugs, no ambulance, no emergency kinds of whatever. It's just straight, clean enough to actually give birth like that. And it was interesting, the point you made where you you didn't want, and this might be something that in the community that I don't know about, the idea of not pushing, would you say is that the more natural of a birth would be a birth where the mother does not push, it doesn't have to push for the baby to come out?
Right.
Yeah, there's no need.
There's no need. I mean, and I think that has to do as well with the amount of acidity that you have down there for allowing the cervix to open up. So allowing, because a lot of that constraint happens down there with the cervix, right, where you can't open up. So there's acidity holding it there. And also that emotional. So it's like, that's control too. So women don't want to give up that control of like, no, but I want it this way, or, oh, I'm scared. It's like that fear. So when you release those emotional, like it's very important to have that emotional process too. So you're releasing the issues that you have with your own birth, or maybe the way you were growing up, because those fears are going to come up within that birth process. So the more that you can release that, the more the body's going to follow suit as well.
Well, I think also, so I'm going to intervene and take it to the next step as well. I think one of the things that you've done a lot compared to women that don't do certain things is beyond the diet. You know, when we talk about, you know, this emotional spiritual healing, you know, Sarah went through severe amount of understanding on how she had abused, for example, her sexual energy. You know, how that is in the, you know, in the privates, or how, seriously, you know, and what are the things that really subconsciously keep tension on that area, right? So how she healed the relationship that she had with her mother and with her lineage of all the women, you know, her grandmothers and everything, so that way her womb and her uterus will feel and have a different energy to itself. So there's so many things that added to it. Then of course that translates into like a baby that comes out that looks like a strawberry, that is super bright, you know, the antithesis of any agendas, and it comes out in, you know, in 10-15 minutes. But what allowed her to, you know, we're talking about the acidity, but also that tension of how she was able to be herself, like you were talking about, how a person can allow themselves to forgive themselves for everything that they have carried. They could be obstructing some of those organs, right? Sometimes that translates into women having issues with lactation. And things like that. Okay. And then
and just receiving love, simply as receiving the baby's love. Okay. And I know that sounds, I know it sounds crazy because everyone's like, well, I love this baby, but like when you have it there and you're like, oh my gosh, like this angelic being that I just delivered, like actually receiving that love for the baby and having that fear of like, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to be a good enough mother? Am I going to, like, all these thoughts go in your head while you're, you know, pregnant and while you give birth. And then afterwards there's a lot of emotional stuff that can be addressed prior to help facilitate the process and the birthing process. Yeah, definitely. Because that's, you know, it's all hand in hand. And, you know, I always tell people, get on the Mucus-free healing system and get ready to eliminate deep emotional traumas and childhood traumas and adulthood traumas and whatever trauma you got that's in your, you know, for lack of a better concept, DNA that's in your blood. You will be forced to deal with it. And when you're doing the Mucus-free healing system the proper way, it becomes impossible for you to run away from it. And because within society, people have created a lot of ways to run away from this trauma, to ignore it, to think that it's just in your mind, or if just all these different things that don't work, as opposed to, what do you say, look, you know, going straight into the valley of the shadow of death and dealing with whatever's there. For each person has their own stuff. And so that makes sense as well, where you went through your process, your physiological cleansing and spiritual and on all those different levels. So by the time you have the child, now there's an actual, the kind of electricity, the kind of connection that, because like you said, a lot of mothers like, oh, I love my child and it's such a, you know, my connection. But what kind of connection is it? In these standard normal methods where they take the child, they chop stuff, and then and don't even get me started on, they take the child, let's cut off its foreskin if it's a male. Let's mutilate. Let's, you know, thanks society for that with me. You know, we get it's sick. It's absolutely sick. But it's all based on pus and mucus level consciousness. It's just all from that standpoint. But would it make more sense as opposed to, the child is grabbed and cut and they do all this stuff, and then after it's been, you know, I mean, it's like you know, after it's been handled by all these people, then it's given back to the mother. Here you go. You know, like, oh, thank you. You know, it's like, what kind of connection is that? That's bizarre. You know, when you look at it. I want you to look right here. Here's another great video specifically for you. So click right here, and I will see you over there. Peace, love, and breath.